thing.
Well, that's psychology too, and I spoke of that on my show, and obviously I've earned the full ire of the mainstream media, and I don't care, because for me, and that offer was there. I mean, it was very clear to me that this is the one issue, if you don't talk about, well, you can maintain a comfortable life for you and your kids. But I just didn't like how many times I kept finding in the history of Israel and in the president of Israel defense for pedophiles. It just didn't work for me. Like, that Zionists were so hardcore about Israel, were defending pedophilia, and I pressed an accidental button when I started speaking about Sigmund Freud. The Freud family is what created propaganda. Edward Bernays, the Freud family is what created PR, the biggest PR firms in the world. And they just keep coming up with pedophilia scandals. Clement Freud, pedophile. Sigmund Freud, pedophile. His father, a pedophile. Defending his friend, William Fleece, a pedophile. And when you can then trace that, and it's funny you talk about the streets, these were people that were weapons dealers and drug dealers that then started Hollywood, right? Yeah. They started Hollywood. Charlie Chaplin, a pedophile, who was under one of their thumbs. And you start realizing when you speak to people in Hollywood and they start speaking about the fact that there's so much pedophilia that's always taken place throughout Hollywood from the 20s. The ADL got started defending a pedophile. Yeah. So to me, if this state is going to be on the side of pedophilia, and for whatever reason people keep turning the other cheek, that everyone who supports this state seems to be okay with the pedophile origins, the ADL is now involved in our government. We know that a lot of these people in our government are being blackmailed. I wonder why. I personally want to hear my conspiracy theorists. I think pornography websites are basically, they're able to figure out what your demented interests are. So these people, they're making you more and more perverse, more and more perverse. Suddenly you're watching some weird stuff, and then they got you watching some 12-year-old girl, whatever it is. Boom, you're under their control. And I think this is what Jeffrey Epstein, all of this stuff is about, getting men who would be in positions of power to acquiesce to some pedophilic pornography, and then they're under their control. I really believe that.
I think you're right. And there's two things I'm going to say. First, I'm going to say they've checked my hard drives. And I love to say that to everybody who says, Andrew, you're a human trafficker. They've literally checked my hard drives. For the last 4 years, my hard drives have been checked. Check the hard drives of 99% of people in the mainstream. Go check their hard drives. Here we are, 4 years into this human trafficking garbage. No one's even seen a video or a picture of a single woman claiming to be human trafficked. Right? It's completely insane. Secondly, you're right. There's also a psychological component, which I think ties into the masculine, because men are built in a way where we like to show dominance, and you show dominance in many different ways. But one of the ways you do it is by having access to things other people can't have access to. So I feel like if you get these losers and then you put them in a position of power for the first time in their life, and then you tell them that nobody's allowed to be a pedophile, but you are, that actually makes it more tempting than it was before. Not because of the pedophilic interest. It's because they're allowed to do something others can't do. And that's a power ego trip, which once again makes it more appealing. It's kind of interesting how the male mind will work. But I know if you take an idiot and you give him some power and say, you can do this, but no one else can, he's going to be tempted by that thing no matter what it is. I mean, that's why men do a lot of things. That's the reason we buy fancy cars. Is it really the car, or is it because other people can't get it? That's the whole point. It's the peacocking. It's like, look what I can do. And amongst their perverse social circles, I guess it's a badge of honor to a degree. Mm-hmm. And then we're also going to talk about the fact that a lot of these men are not particularly attractive and haven't been attractive their whole lives. I have another theory, and once again, I have no data at all to back this up, but I find it very interesting that it's Western politicians which are primarily caught up with these things, primarily. You see a Russian billionaire, a Russian oligarch, whatever, and he has a wife, and then he gets caught cheating with his girlfriend. He has some girlfriend somewhere. Cool. And then we'll be like, that's terrible. Yeah, cool, it's terrible, fine. But then what do the Western politicians do? They walk around with Michelle. They walk around with their wife, and then they get caught on islands. So, is that any better?
Well,
is that worse?
Western politicians gay? That's another thing, and that is what kind of leads me to believe that a lot of these people are being blackmailed and that they're being selected for these positions. I mean, Emmanuel Macron is a homosexual. There's no question about that. Zelensky is a homosexual. Yep. You've got, I was going to say, I almost said Fidel Castro. Trudeau, Fidel's son. You got Trudeau. He's a homosexual. Yep. Barack Obama was a homosexual. Yep. And then finally, when we get in the West, a president who's definitely not a homosexual, Donald Trump, they just freak out. They completely lose their minds. This guy cannot be president. He's not allowed to be president because there's no aspect of the most extreme form of blackmail, which is if we know that you have engaged in pedophilia, that you've been involved in any of these weird sexual scenarios, we can control you in office. Yeah. And there's obviously the deep state thing is not a conspiracy theory. It's part of the reason why they didn't want Tucker to conduct that interview with Putin, because the first thing Putin said is I I don't deal with your president. I'm dealing with the CIA.
Yeah.
Right. That is the deep state. He's like, couldn't even
the president, I don't talk to him.
The CIA is who's controlling your nations, which means that our democracy, the republic, it's an illusion.
Yep. Oh, 100% true. And when I say things, I don't, obviously exceptions disprove the rule. I talk in the general, but in general, it is the masculine which protects the society in general. And in general, feminine are more accepting of certain things, and gays are closer to the feminine. So we say that we have men in charge. None of these people you named are men. None of them are masculine. There's nothing masculine about them. The true masculine essence is being prepared to die on a hill. And the number one thing we died for since the dawn of human time was our land and our women and our children. That's what we died for. And the reason we were prepared to die for them is because we know we could never be assimilated into another tribe. If there was another tribe on the other side of the hill, even if they outnumbered us 10-1, we knew that if they managed to get into the village, we were dead. The women can assimilate into their tribe because the women can join their tribe and have children. The women will be taken. We die. So we're prepared to fight. So the masculine essence, truthfully, is to be able to stand up against an army you know you can't beat and fight to the bitter end. And that's why they don't want anyone masculine in power, because then they can't be influenced. We just talked about those shadow figures making the phone calls. We don't want anyone who sends there like Trump and says, no, I don't care. That's not how this is going to go. So they like weakness. So even the idea of having a man in charge, all these people we just named aren't men. They're homosexual, which brings them pretty much close to girls. And when I say girls, not in a negative, insulting way, I'm trying to explain the feminine mindset of we can assimilate with the enemy more than we must fight and die on this hill with the enemy. And that's why they're doing it all. And you're right. It's certainly a coincidence. And it's also an extremely interesting coincidence that, global homo, LGBT, that is the culture of the West now. It's the number one thing you can't insult. You can't go against, you can't degrade, you can burn an American flag before you can burn a pride flag. You'll catch a prison term for that. It's truly the new God. You can insult Jesus all day long, but you can't insult LGBT in a Christian country. And if you look at any of the American embassies in all of their vassal states, the first thing they do is try and push this LGBT insanity. They try and push this global homo everywhere they can to erode the masculine spirit. We talk about how the family's under attack, and it certainly is. There's a lot of ways it's under attack. LGBT is one of them. It's one of the things they use. But, there's a million different ways they've destroyed the nucleus of the cell. I was having this conversation the other day. I was talking to somebody, and we were saying, well, we're talking about men dying on hills, like I just said. It was after my Jesus protest, after I protested, because I was supposed to go to jail for that, because I didn't have a license. I didn't have a permit to protest. I'm on judicial control. I'm supposed to get 6 months mandatory. So I said bye to everyone, said to Tristan, ready for jail, packed a bag, went there to go to jail. So put me in jail for respecting Jesus. Put me in jail. I dare you. And even they knew better than that. So they were just like, please go home. So they didn't put me in jail. But I was ready to do it. And I was talking about dying on a hill. And I was talking to a girl, and she's like, yeah, but men aren't men anymore. And I said, but this is the thing that's so interesting if you actually analyze how they've destroyed society, because you're right, men aren't men anymore. But if you want to talk about dying on hills, you don't just need rich men or famous men. You actually need the common man. You need every man. And most men in my position, especially financially, are not interested in getting in any kind of trouble, right? We're interested in protecting our profits more than we are protecting a particular street or a particular society or a particular ideal. Most of the people at my level of wealth just sell out and just bounce. Mm-hmm. So I'm like, you need the common man to be prepared to die on a hill. And that's why certain agendas, like when you talk about this LGBT stuff, or when they talk about, or they show that if you marry a woman and that woman betrays you and she wants the son's penis chopped off, then she's going to win. Or feminism, or all these different things. I tried to explain to her that if a man doesn't feel like he's the king of his own household, why would he feel like he has any duty to protect anything? Right? So we don't even have common men with a woman having a family in a society, and the man feels like he's the head of the house and he feels like he has a duty to defend that house. Even the people the common man and the common woman, when they are getting together, the man doesn't feel like he's the king of the house, so he doesn't feel like he has an obligation to protect it. And then there's a whole bunch of men, a large swath of the population, who don't get any girls at all. And girls are just on social media trying to chase the top 5% of men who are only interested in protecting their profits and nothing else, who are globalist anyway because they fly all around the world. And we look at Western society as a whole. I was talking to this girl, and she's like, yeah, but men don't stick up for us. I'm like, the man you need to stick up for you is the exact kind of man you ignore. You don't even reply to his messages. You want the guy over there in Mykonos who has no interest in anything but yacht fuel pricing. Mm-hmm. So, society is actually so truly broken that they've managed to just infiltrate it from every single level because the nucleus of the cell is damaged. And LGBT is another huge part of that, right? They are so desperate to prevent the idea of a man living a woman having kids and the man being the head of the house and the man being prepared to protect that house from all ideals. That's what they're scared of the most.
Well, this gets into why I think that they attacked you. It actually wasn't my idea, so I have to give credit here to Dave Smith because he's wonderful, and I had him on for a couple of hours last week, and he introduced a fact to me, and I've like, oh my gosh, this is totally why they attacked Donald Trump. It's why they attacked you. He was actually referring to David Duke and how there was this full media left and right attempt when he was running for governor to take him down, and how somebody had written an article about how strange it was because they tried to say it was because he was in the KKK, but obviously people that were in the KKK just went on and became the Democrat Party. Like nobody cared about that. Yeah. And actually what it was that he unexpectedly galvanized the populist right. And he said it's the only thing that the establishment is actually really fearful of is people that for whatever reason are able to galvanize real men. He's like, the populist left, nobody cares. Like, the blue hair, tattoos, skateboarders. But the populist right are people who know how to shoot, who know how to hunt, and who will go to war for their families. Yeah. So any person that unexpectedly galvanizes men that like embody true natural masculinity is going to be attacked by the Matrix. I never understood why you were so, it made no sense to me. It's like, I met you with George years ago, and then suddenly I looked up and every single person was doing like an Andrew Tate is this video. And then I realized, oh, okay, after Dave Smith put that piece together for me, I'm like, he unexpectedly galvanized what would be the populist right. You're talking about men returning to masculinity. Yeah. It doesn't matter what they say. You can be great, all of this stuff. That cannot happen when they're trying to turn everyone into a homosexual because it's easier to subjugate homosexuals because, homosexual men aren't going to be an army of people that go and try to like grab their guns and take on the government.
Well, they're used to bending over.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's what, and that's what the government wants you to do, right? They're used to bending over. In fact, they quite like it, which is exactly what the government wants you to do.